So as I was saying, there's two of these. There's, I think, two of those. There's three of those, and then you got some matching. So we got two of those, two of those, two of those, and then three of those. So I want to start with this one because I think this might be the most confusing. So consider the graph. Determine the amplitude, the period, phase shift, and vertical shift of each. Then write the equation. If this is a cosine graph, that's a sine graph. So the first thing I remember is cosine, right, starts like this. And sine goes like that. So right here, the amplitude is the measure from the midline to the highest point. So look at where my stuff is. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The amplitude is not 5, okay? It's the measure from the midline to the highest point. So the midline is at 3. So then 4, 5. So my amplitude is 2 because I go from the midline to the highest point. Does everybody see what I'm talking about? Okay, so what does that tell me about this graph straight up? That it moved upward. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Yes. Amplitude is the measure from the midline to the highest point. Yes. Is the midline. That is why that dash is in there. Because that's telling you that the graph moved upward. So I know that it has a vertical shift. So in the back of my mind, I got to remember it's got a vertical shift. So next I say what the period is. Well, I'm looking and the period tells me how long it takes to make one complete cycle. Well, look, here's my start, here's the midline, there's my low point, there's the midline, there's my high point. So how long did it take me to get through one cycle? How long did it take me to get through one cycle? It's kind of right there. It took 6 pi to get through one cycle. Okay? So the period is how long does it take you to get through one cycle? The frequency is how many cycles can you fit between 0 and 2 pi? Is how many you can get from 0 to 2 pi. So if the period equals 6 pi, right? Then I know that the frequency was 2 pi over something that gave me 6 pi. So that lets me know that it was a fraction. Because if I start with 2 pi and end up with 6 pi and I'm dividing, because that's a keep change flip, I know I got a fraction. So I need to figure out what kind of fraction. 2 pi divided by, let's just say f, equals 6 pi, right? So I need to figure out what 2 pi is. Well, I know 2 times 3 will give me 6, right? So then that kind of tells me that the frequency is 1/3. Does everybody follow that? Does everybody follow that? Now, why do I need to know the frequency? Because my equation or function, which they're asking me to do, will look like, well, this is cosine. So cosine of b times x minus c plus d. That doesn't need to go there. So let's erase that because that's going to make that confusing. All right. So my basic setup for my function is a times cosine of b times x minus c plus d. All right. So anyway, so that's that. Phase shift. Did it move left or right? Well, remember how my graph's supposed to start. It's supposed to start at the x-axis, or excuse me, at the y-axis, at the high point, and it's supposed to end at the high point. Did it start at the high point here? Yeah. So then there was no phase shift. It didn't move left or right. So that's 0 or NA. Then I got vertical shift. Now, see, that makes a difference because usually this is the midline. But where's my midline? It's way up there. So then my vertical shift is from this point to that point. So I just count. Uno, dos, tres. So my vertical shift is what? 3. So I got 3 right there. So now I need to write my function. Well, my amplitude is 2, so that's A. I got cosine. My frequency was what? 1/3 of x minus c, but my c was 0. So just to be thorough, I'm going to put 0 on there. And then plus 3. And then I'm just going to rewrite that here. So I got 2 times cosine of 1/3 x plus 3. That's my function. That's how I would do that. All right, so my next one, I'm going to do something similar. But see, the first thing I want you to notice from this is, how does my graph look? That's what my graph's supposed to look like, and look at what we see. What does that tell you from jump? Look at what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to start as at the midline, hit the high point, hit the midline, hit the low point, hit the midline. What is it doing here that it should tell you something right off the bat? And not shift it down, because this is what it's supposed to look like. And it's supposed to go here, 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 and there. It's backwards, or it's a reflection. And what do we know about the reflection? It was one little simple thing. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. What do we know about the reflection? Yeah, that's so helpful. Let's just go up here. Now, say it again, ma'am. See, if I had a reflection, it would be yes when there's a negative sign right there. So what does that tell you off jump? Because we're trying to write the function. So we know that right off jump that it's a negative right there. So then now we can push that to the side and keep moving. So my amplitude, what's the length from the midline, which is right here? Can everybody see that the x-axis is the midline? So that means that it didn't move up or down, because that's the midline. So off a jump, I know that that's 0. But that's the midline, and let's look at the highest point. Let's see. That looks like 1/2. Yep, that's 1/2. So my amplitude for this is 1/2. Right? That's 1/2. So instead of being 1, we know that's 1/2. So like this right here would be 1/4. All right. So then the next thing, let's see. But let's see how my period. Remember, my period is how long it takes to get to one cycle. Well, I'm supposed to have 5 points, right? So let's see how many points we got. I start right here. I hit right here. I hit right here. I hit right here. And I hit right here. Was that 5 points? Okay, so then what's my period for this? 2 pi over 5. Excellent, Ella. That's my period. It is just the length that it takes you to get through one complete cycle. So if 2 pi over 5 was one complete cycle, then my frequency is frequency over 2 pi. So what's my frequency? It's not 2.5. I got 2 pi over 5. And then the period says is 2 pi divided by the frequency. So what would my frequency be? Say that again. It'd be 5. Can everybody see why the frequency is 5? Because that's my period. Period equals 2 pi divided by the frequency. If my period is 2 pi over 5, then the frequency's got to be 5. Yes, no, or am I talking to myself? Does that make sense, or am I going too fast? Because we said the period is 2 pi divided by the frequency. It doesn't give you like what the frequency is down here. It just says, well, 2 pi is how long it takes to get through one cycle. 2 pi over 5. So that means the frequency is 5. Now, why do we care about that? Because B is the frequency. So now I know what A is, and I know what B is. I also know that this is sine. So now I got negative 1/2 of sine times 5. And I know that it started at the origin. So it didn't move left or right. Does everybody see that? It didn't move left or right because I told you as quiet as it's kept, I'm probably not going to hit you too much with phase shift because phase shift make things so much more confusing. I'm probably not going to hit you with phase shift. So there was no phase shift or NA. So then that means it's just one negative one half sine of X. And then do we got a vertical shift? Did it go up or down? Did it go up or down? It didn't go up or down. It just reflected. See, look at the difference between 3 and 4. The midline is the green line, right? It went up 1, 2, 3 because there's my new midline. Where's my midline at right here? It's the same spot that it was, right? And so it didn't go up or down. So that would mean the vertical shift is 0. So this right here is my function. It's negative 1 half sine of 5x. 5 is the frequency because when I do the period, 2 pi divided by the frequency. Well, my period is 2 pi divided by 5. So then 5 is my frequency. So that's my answer right there for my function. Does anybody got any questions on that? That's a bit much though, right? If you remember this, if you keep this in your notes, and just remember, A is the amplitude, B is the frequency, C is the phase shift, D is the vertical shift. And then you just plug and chug. You also see if you have a reflection. In this case, I have a reflection. So remember what your basic cosine graph is supposed to look like and what your basic sine graph is supposed to look like. And then adjust accordingly. Does anybody got any questions on this? Does anybody have any questions on it? All right, let's go to this. All right, so I got to draw this stuff. Oh no, Ferg, what am I going to do? So it says I got 3 sine of 2x. So what's the period? Period is 2 pi divided by the frequency. Remember that when I'm looking at my equation, it looks like this. It's A times sine or cosine of B times X minus C plus D. Well, we don't have any C's or D's. Does everybody see that? C would be right here. D would be right there. Right? So there's no C or D. So I'm not asking you to draw C or D. So we're going to keep the midline right where it is. So what's the amplitude for that? 3. Excellent, Marcus. That's 3. So I know my graph hits this line and goes as low as that line. Next, sine. Sine starts right there. Next, I got to think of what the period is. So I got 2 pi over frequency is my period. Where's the frequency at? Up here. Where's the frequency? What is it? It's 2. The frequency is 2. So my period is going to be 2 pi over 2, which is what? Pi. So what does that tell me? That tells me that I can get through one complete graph right here. So I should go from here to there and have one complete sine graph. Does everybody see what I'm talking about? All right, and then so we don't forget, make sure you remember that a sine graph goes like this. It does that. So that's what I'm going to do. I need 5 points. Well, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. So I start here. I go to my high point. I go back here, and then I go to my low point, and then I go back here. So my graph is going to look like that. And then just to be thorough, I'm going to do it again. High point, midline, low point, midline. Now, technically, they say that you're supposed to go from negative 2 pi to pi, but I'm more worried about just the positive. But if you really wanted to be thorough, you do the same thing. I got to go here, 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 and then here, 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 and here. And then I just would go backwards. Now, what am I really concerned about? This right here. I want you to give me that. If you give me a little bit of that, I'm not going to trip, but I want the front part. I want all of this here. So let's do this next one. So first off, it says it's cosine. So cosine tells me that I start high, I hit the midline, I hit the low point, I go back to the midline, and I end high. Well, what if this was -4? What would I do then? If this is what my usual pattern looks like, what would it be if it was -4? What would I do? Yep. So what would I do? If this is what my graph usually looks like, start at the bottom. So I start at the bottom. Okay, so let's just put that in the memory bank. So what's my amplitude? Is never negative. So it's 4. So we got 4. And then what's my period? No, that's my frequency. What's my period? It's definitely not 5. Pi. Excellent, sir. I'm sorry I misheard you. So it's pi. So what does that tell me? That tells me that I should get through one graph right here. And what did we say? We start at the low point, right? We hit the midline. We go to the highest point. We go back to the midline, and then we hit the lowest point. And then we do it again. Right here, right there, right here, right there. And then we just do that. So, and then, now that's if it was negative. So I want to make sure you understand what happens if you have a negative in there. So, because I'll tell you, there might be a negative in what you're doing. So if I had a negative for sine, it would look like this. It would it would be at 0, but then it would hit the bottom first, then go to the top, and then hit the midline back. And if you have a negative for cosine, it'll start at the bottom instead of the top. Bottom, midline, top, midline, bottom. So that's if it's negative. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so then let's see real quick if it's positive. If it's positive, let's do this. So everything that we just said is the same except it's positive. So we're going to start at the top. So the amplitude is 4, so we start here, hit that, hit the bottom, hit that, and then hit the top. And then we do the same thing again. Hit that, hit the bottom, hit that, hit the top. And so those are the two things that I need. I need those two things and that. All right. Does anybody have any questions about either of these? Does anybody have any questions on if you have a negative in front of your amplitude? Right? That A, if it's negative, the amplitude still isn't negative. Don't make that mistake. Amplitude is always positive, and so is the frequency. All right. So let's talk about these two. You have the amplitude and period for each function graphed. I don't think you're going to have to deal with the equations because we already dealt with the equations. You know what? Let's just be cautious. Let's see what we get. So anyway, what's the amplitude for number 10? 3. This is a sine or a cosine graph. It's sine. It starts at the midline. Cosine starts where? High point, like this one, for instance. So this is a sine graph. My amplitude is 3. So I need to think about next what my period is. So let's look at how long it takes to get through one complete cycle. That's one cycle. That's 2 cycles. So how long does it take me to get through one cycle? Not 2. That's the frequency. How long does it take me to get through one cycle? There's 2 graphs. There's 2 complete cycles between 0 and 2 pi. That's the frequency. So what is the period? It's pi. Thank you, ma'am. The frequency, you take 2 pi and divide it by your frequency for your period. We just said that the frequency was 1, 2. That pi should probably be right here. That might be why it's confusing. But that's what that pi means. That pi right here is 1 cycle, and then 2 pi is 2 cycles. So there's a frequency of 2 for this. So now that I know the frequency is 2, right? The frequency is 2. I got the amplitude is 3, and I know it's a sine graph. I also know that the graph didn't move up or down. It didn't move left or right. So I could actually write the equation. It's just 3 sine of 2x, and that's my equation. Now, it should be like y equals or f of x equals, but that's it. What about this next one? We already know off jump what kind of graph is it? It's a cosine graph, right? So what's the amplitude? Can't hear you. It's 4. And then what's the period? Well, let's see. How long does it take me to get through one complete cycle? Well, I got my up, get to midline, low point, midline, up right here. How long does it take me to get through one complete cycle? 2 pi, so that's my period. So if 2 pi is my period, what's my frequency? Remember, period equals 2 pi over the frequency. If my period is 2 pi, what's my frequency? It's not pi squared. You're thinking too hard. Thinking way too hard now. Thinking way too hard. It's just 1. Remember what frequency is. Frequency is how frequent do I see a graph between 0 and 2 pi? Well, look, from 0 to 2 pi, I got 1 cycle. So my frequency is 1. So why do I care about the frequency? When I'm writing the equation, I don't use the period. I use the frequency. So I don't want you to be confused and write the period down. It's not the period that I write down when I write my equation. It's the frequency. So for these that aren't moving left or right, I'm going to have an equation that looks like this. It's going to be A sine or cosine of B times X. Those are the only 2 things I got to worry about. All right, let me finish this one and then we can stop. And then I'll start recording after lunch. So A and B are the only 2 things I care about. A is pretty simple. It's just how high or low is your graph. Is 4. But here, I know that my period is 2 pi. So that means I got to think of what frequency? Well, from 0 to 2 pi, it's only 1 graph. That's my frequency. So my equation would be y equals 4 cosine x. That's it. All right. So we'll finish this after lunch.